I'm like, the meeting's coming in September, that would be GPC budget.
Yeah. Mayor Davis Younger, we're live. Right.
So calling good evening, calling the Governance and Personnel Committee of the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority to order. Henderson, are you calling them all, Ms. Henderson, or?
Yes.
Oh, okay, yes.
Okay.
Chair Jefferson,
Present.
Mayor Reed,
Present.
Mayor Davis Younger,
Present.
and we have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. I need to say this meeting is being conducted in person and live streamed via YouTube, right? Get that out of the way. So I make a motion to approve the minutes. Do we do that? Mayor Reed is here. I make a motion to approve the minutes from January 11th, 2024. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That motion carries. We have our minutes. So next item on the agenda is standard is waiting with big breath. I see it. To give us an update on 2024 General Assembly session.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, good to see you in person.
Yes.
Missed you all. To be kind of short and sweet, it was a very quiet session for transportation, which is actually kind of nice for a change, which actually allowed all of us, your liaisons, your members, to focus on Metro. So that was kind of nice. But I'll go through a couple of bills. As you remember, our member, Senator Boysko, was carrying a bill to make the technical amendment in the code about how MVTA appoints members to the Technical Advisory Committee. That sailed through General Assembly. No votes. So that is now before the governor. There were bills that were introduced to revert back to how Speaker used to appoint our House members. And it's revert back to our original legislation. So the Speaker must appoint members of the House of Delegates as his two appointees. That goes into effect July 1. And those were bills from Delegate Krizik and Delegate Sickles. Then, Metro, again, as you remember, we had sort of three goals. One was enough funding from the state to match local funding from the Metro Compact members to cover FY25 and FY26, the Virginia portion of the gap. We needed a temporary, at least 2-year exemption from the 3% subsidy cap increase. And we expected there would be some sort of benchmarking accountability language, but that it wouldn't be onerous or interfering too much. I'm happy to say in the conference budget, we got all three in the way we really, really wanted it. And Delegate Torian, Delegate Sickles, Senator Boysko, Senator Evan, and others were of our delegation who were on finance and appropriations, led the charge and got it done. So we have money in both years, general fund money, $65 million in FY25, $84.5 million in FY26. That money will be matched by the localities through MVTC, the compact members, meaning that Virginia will meet the current expectation of what our share is for those 2 fiscal years to fill the short-term financing gap for Metro. There's a temporary, very clean lifting of the 3% subsidy cap increase for both years in language. And they ended up with the House version of what I would call the accountability language that requires WMATA to conduct a comparison of its overhead costs as compared to a list of named comparable transit systems, Boston, New York, et cetera, et cetera. That's what is in the conference budget amendment. That is what is before the governor. You may recall the governor's standard use budget didn't have money. It had a relief from the 3% subsidy cap, but it was linked to a corrective action plan. And that the director of the Department of Rail and Public Transportation would be the final sign off on whether WMATA had complied. The House literally had this language. So in the conference budget, I'm sorry, the Senate also had exactly the Senate's budget, no money but language. The House had the money, the 3% the benchmarking language. At the end of the day, the conference went with the House's version of the language. So, the other thing I'll mention is, traffic safety initiatives. As you recall, every time I come and talk to you about this, there are a number of bills that get in, particularly looking at the pedestrian or bicyclist interface with vehicles. And it was partial victory this year. There were a couple of bills that did get out. Delegate Cars, number right. Delegate Cars 1071 is the bill for the governor that I guess make sure to restores previous authority that localities kind of sort of they had. But what the bill says is that localities are permitted to reduce speed limit on state right of ways to no less than 25 miles per hour in designated business districts or resident districts, including VDOT roadways. The locality would have to notify the commissioner of the change. This is the first year in many years where VDOT did not actually oppose this bill. There had been a working group that had been working over the last year to try to see if it could come to closure and allow this to move forward. Everyone seems to be happy with the language. So it did pass General Assembly bipartisan and is before the governor. The other bill, former member now Senator Rome, Senate Bill 336, had a bill passed. There were a number of bills that were looking to expand the current photo camera monitoring for speed. I think almost every locality in Northern Virginia has implemented the authority that was given in the 2022 session. There were a number of bills to expand it, some really creative ideas and some that were pretty straightforward. There definitely was resistance. And again, there's traditional resistance about photo camera use for anything. But she tweaked it a little, and it's around now what's deemed and defined in code as high-risk intersections. Defined in the bill, the monitored road segment is no more than 1,000 feet from a school border, and there has been a fatal accident since 2014. Revenue from the fines are deposited into the Virginia Highway Safety Improvement Program. She worked very hard on this bill through a number. I know it's very unique and it's very specific, but it is the first expansion of the current. I will say both, again, our member, Senator Boysko, who chairs Senate Transportation Committee, and Delegate Terry Delaney, who chairs the House Transportation Committee. So we have both transportation committees chaired by members of the Northern Virginia delegation. Both of them and others were very frustrated that once again, a lot of the bills that people have bring back year after year did not pass. So their intention is to get VDOT to once again convene another working group with interested stakeholders to sit down, talk about the ideas people have had, look at the language of all these bills with the eye, and they've been, Senator Boysko in particular, with the eye of coming back in 2025 with bills that can get passed. So stay tuned. Happy to answer any questions, but this issue of what tools we can use, what ordinances localities can apply, taking examples of what's happening across the country. How do we bring those to Virginia? How to empower localities to implement tools that they may want to use. Again, we get bills on this from all parts of Commonwealth, and hopefully we will somehow get to a place where we can get bills out of General Assembly and then hopefully get signed by the governor.
Tell me again the parameters again,
Sure.
Danica's, because that was a whole lot of.
Yeah, it's very, it was a lot of, yeah, it's a lot of
I didn't read it.
So Senate Bill 336, and it says, expands photo speed monitoring cameras to high-speed intersections. As defined in the bill, the road segment has to be no more than 1,000 feet from a school border. Right now, I believe the code says 750. 750, you can do a photo camera speed for 750 from a school board. This made it out a little further. And basically that intersection, so that intersection, high risk intersection, no more than 1,000 feet from a school. And there has, again, she kept being asked to put sort of another parameter around it. She says, okay, how about this one? Has had a fatal accident since 2014.
And I assume that the reason she did that was to limit the use and or possibly abuse, because I've heard a lot of people express concerns about photo cameras.
Yes,
About privacy, about racial profiling.
yes.
So I assume that some of these restrictions will hopefully down on possible allegations. Those types of.
Right, and I think she had, I don't remember what it is, she had a specific intersection in her district that this was kind of, what was it? Wellensburg Road, that this sort of became like the model for how she was trying to figure out how to make that work. So, but Chair Jefferson is right, you know, one of the, probably the two biggest concerns that get expressed have been privacy. And then we always get the trope of, this is just a way for, local government to raise general funds. So, you know, that is it. But the other thing I think in some ways, having another year is, it seemed like most of the localities haven't had the current systems in place for a long time. And so there's not been any data to show if they've been effective. Hopefully having another year, so we'll have almost 2 years, or for some people 2 years, for some a little less. If there's data that does show they've been effective, then I think that will be really helpful for the discussion point. And I think that's fair. I think that's fair to say, we gave you this authority. A, did you use it? And B, what has it done? What are you seeing as the impact? So I think that'll be the other part of the discussion. Yeah.
Thanks. So I was in Richmond the afternoon where they postponed all those bills and testified in favor of them. So of course they were all postponed. So if you don't like something, you really need to send me down there to testify in support. But there are standards to prevent, like where you place them. You don't place them in like equity areas. So I think there's more care about that than there once was, but it's generally regarded as really important. I think any of us in all of our jurisdictions see speeding is just like, it's ridiculous. It's just totally out of control. And you can't have police everywhere, even if you want them everywhere. You can't. So this is a good thing. So hopefully, when it comes back up, we can address whatever the concerns are.
There was an interesting proposal from Senator Bagby, represents Richmond and Henrico, that unfortunately didn't get passed, and it was based, unfortunately, again, like a lot of these are, because there'd been a fatality, and it would have brought higher ed communities in. Particularly if you've got a university in an urban area like VCU, it was sort of the same thing. Like they could set up photo monitoring. Right now, they don't fall under the current code. It's school, it's K-12. It's not higher ed. He wasn't quite able to get that through, but that's another idea that we saw. Yep. So discussions continue on that front.
It's encouraging to know though that it's still active.
Right.
Yeah, lots of people are interested for sure. Happy to answer any questions.
So the other side, we're done with that, the VDOT that you mentioned and convening other groups.
Yes.
Who will be part of?
That's a really good question. I suspect that anybody who would want to be probably could. Because again, they really do need to get a good representation of different size localities, cities, towns,
counties. I'm
counties.
asking because you gotta get
Right.
pieces of all of it.
Yeah,
to really.
actually, we should talk to Senator Boyce.
Yeah.
And Carrie and Delegate Delaney, if you know her, and to say, if you're, particularly
Right.
if your jurisdiction is interested in being part of that, say, yeah, we would like to
Okay.
be part of that. But, you know,
Thank you.
knock on wood, we'll get some bills next year. And I think there will be guardrails around it. I mean, there's no question that they'll, much like they initially set it up, so there'll be, like, where would you put them, what data you're gonna get, there's gonna be back and forth over, you know, where the fines go, is it highway safety, is it literary fund, and quality, et cetera, et cetera. So there are just a lot of things to go over.
CDOT is willing, wants to sit down and.
Yeah, I think so.
That's progress.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
So.
Yeah, I mean, they
It is
didn't,
educating and
Yeah.
language and all of that too,
Mhm.
so they, at least they're listening, so. I don't have any other questions.
yeah, I mean, I would say, this concept around safety is something that's discussed at the Commonwealth Transportation Board pretty much every other month as they're looking at the statewide numbers, which have not been trending well,
Right.
but they aren't across the country. They're also very concerned. It is sort of very interesting, and there's sort of VDOT issues around sort of how facilities are designed. But a bulk of that prevention work is done through the DMV through educational efforts, behavioral modification. So it's education, it's awareness, it's the things you see on sign. And they do this fascinating chart where they literally chart, you know, what caused an accident. Was it the design of the road? Was it speed? Was it impairment? Was it distraction? And was it phone, or was it text, or whatever they were doing? A lot of it is behavioral things. It's using text. It's being under the influence of whatever. It's not paying attention. That seems to be the bulk of the causation. And then there's speed, which really makes anything that happens even worse. So it's complicated, but we need to get a handle on it because we end up getting injured and dying.
I don't have anything. That was good. Thank you, Session Leader. Thank you, Ms. Finger, for that update. Good work, as always. Appreciate it. If there's nothing else, then we can adjourn. We can see, meeting is adjourned.